But let's welcome a very, very fine, outstanding friend of ours, Cindra Kamphoff.
Awesome. Thank you, Don. Thank
Well, good job.
Thank you. Well, I thought I could start and talk about what it's like to work with Pro Bowl athletes like this. Anybody interested in some stories? Okay, let's go, huh? Or what it's like to be on the Vikings sidelines, of Vikings games. You know, I'm down there, kind of small. And this was a picture I took last year at training camp, and I'm like, how come I can't see? Oh, well, this is where I stand. You know, about right there. But I have spent the last 4 years working with the Minnesota Vikings, providing mental training to them. So basically what that means is I work one-on-one with the players. And it's amazing. It's everything that I ever wanted. And I've actually learned a lot from them that I'd love to share with you today. And really it has helped shape the book that I have and helped shape the 10 practices that there's a handout in front of you related to them. So, you know, really what I'm here to talk about is how we can really train our mind just like a pro athlete. And the pro athlete does the same things that we need to do to thrive and to really be our best and really kind of have a magnificent life. A pro athlete, for them to thrive, has to be optimistic. And so to me, it all starts with your mindset. And that to me means that it's your engine. Okay? And what I mean by that is it powers every single thing that you do. It powers your actions, it powers your emotions, it powers how you make meaning of things in your life. And it ultimately powers your destiny, right? The way that you think about things shapes your whole experiences in life. And so I think about this as your engine. And when you think about driving your car, right? Can you drive your car without an engine? No, it's essential, right? And the same kind of thing about mindset. That this is really essential for you to thrive in your business and in your life. But the thing is we have this really old, ancient brain. And what I mean by that is at some point we had to fight animals to stay alive as humans, right? And so much of what we experience is part of being human, but we can really get in our own way. And I'm here to talk about how I get in my own way sometimes, just to be vulnerable with you. And even though that I know I have these skills, been working in this profession for 20 years, there are ways that I get in my own way. And so you might think that mindset is like riding a bicycle. Okay, so I want you to think about how old were you when you first rode a bicycle? 5? Yeah, maybe 4. Maybe you learned maybe when you were 20, or maybe you haven't ridden a bicycle yet, right? But, you know, if you did learn to ride a bike, I bet, you know, you could get on a bicycle today and it'd be pretty easy. Right? So you might think that mindset is like that once you learn these skills, you got it. But it's quite the opposite. Why the pro athletes come to me every week is because they know that it's essential to their success. And they know it powers everything they do. But it takes deliberate, intentional action to really be making sure this is really helping you think big about your life, about what you can do, about how you can serve others. And again, we're working against our own biology. So if you know what I mean, just say yes with me. Yes. Okay, I like it. So today I'm really thinking about grit and leadership. And the way I think about leadership is I think about there's 2 really ways that you can lead. I think first, to lead others, you got to lead yourself, right? So the first level of leadership to me is like being a leader of yourself. And that means making sure this is really on task. That you're in charge of your own life, you're in charge of your own destiny. You've thought about what do you want to do in 2020? And that to me means that you have the mental strength, you have the skills, and you work on it deliberately every day. And today what I'm going to share with you is some practices that you could use every day in your life to continue to make sure this is working for you, not against you. And so, you know, that's the first level of leadership to me. The second level is leading other people. And you got to lead yourself before you can lead others, right? And to me, leadership, leading others means that you're helping other people reach their best, that you're helping them achieve a goal. Maybe you're mentoring them. And so you got to lead yourself before you lead others. So I love your participation today, okay? And so I want you to think about this question. When you think about success in your profession or success in your life, what are the attributes that lead to success? So just shout them out. Intention. Awesome. Listening. Excellent. What else? Persistence. Confidence, determination. Showing up. Being there. Courage, preparation. Mindset. Okay, all right, thank you. So I would say that all of these, everything you just said relates to mindset. Like every single variable you said leads to here and where your focus is, right? Confidence is all about mindset. Persistence is all about mindset. And if you could grab the colorful, beautiful sheet in front of you, it's in somewhere on your table, and it has the 10 practices of the world's best on the sheet. Okay, and so this is the structure of my book, and so my PhD is in performance psychology. So as I was kind of thinking about what is the message I want to provide in this book, I thought a lot about what does the research say about performance psychology, but also what do I see that the best do? And I work with some pro athletes, but I also do a lot of executive coaching and see people the best in their field. And so I put together this list. And so these are really practical things that you can do every day to think and act like the world's best, okay? And when I was here last year, we talked about mastering your thoughts, we talked about purpose, and we talked about dominating what you can control. And so what I thought today I would do is talk about a few others and really help us think about how can we move forward with like the best mindset that we can in 2020. But I thought I'd tell you a story first. Okay, so anybody a Vikings fan here? Help me out. Oh yeah, okay, I should have started with the skull chant. Okay, so this is one player I've worked with for, believe it or not, 9 years. I do mental training for the Minnesota State Maverick football team. And so they are playing tomorrow to go to the national championship game, Division II. So go Mavs, anybody a Maverick? Oh yeah, look at that. We got 4 Mavericks in the house. Okay. So give them some positive like energy tomorrow if you could. But I first met Adam when I started working with a Maverick football team. And I started because there were some coaching changes. And so they brought me in to really help them kind of stay focused despite all these things they couldn't control. And I started seeing Adam really thrive as a leader. He'd be the person during workshops that I would say, hey, Adam, what do you think? And he would share. And he was so into working on his mindset. And if you know anything about his story, Detroit Lakes, Minnesota, right? So he's a Minnesotan, went to play football, Minnesota State Maverick football team, got a $500 scholarship, okay? And yeah, $500. And even when he was a senior, you know, so I heard these reports that a Vikings coach called the Maverick coaches and said, do you have anybody on, you know, on the team that would maybe be a good prospect for us? And a coach said no. Yeah. So think about all the odds that he had to go through just to get to where he is now. And so he had one shot to try out for the Minnesota Vikings, just one shot. And they loved his grit. They loved his determination. They loved his ability to live and let go, okay, which is something we're going to talk a little bit about today. And right here is on your Optimist creed, right? That to forget the mistakes of the past and press on to the greater achievements of the future. So they loved his ability to really have this great mindset. They signed him to the team, okay, had to work his way up, was cut from the team, put on the practice squad. And then they gave him a shot the next year for special teams. Made it as a special teams player of the year for the Vikings. It just continues to get better and better and better. Last 2 years, a Pro Bowl athlete, which means if you don't follow football, some of the best in the NFL, was ranked 32nd in the NFL last year. So go Adam. And so I want to share with you a few things that he said in the foreword. That's kind of to shape our comments for today. And to help us think about how can we kind of channel this in terms of in our own lives. Okay, so this is a few things that he said. He said, you know what? I asked him to share in this forward, like how'd you get to where you are today? You know, what are the mindset principles that you used? And if anybody I know, he uses all of these 10, and he's amazing at it. So I'm going to share with you know, as we go through this, I'll share with you a few things that he does. But he said, I kept my head where it belonged. Okay, focused on every opportunity that was given to me. And he said, rather than focusing on all the things I can't control, okay, variables that will change whether I want them to or not, I have to keep my mind focused on what I can control, which is practice number 5, right in the center of that sheet, because that's the heart. Very difficult to do, and I think we're programmed to actually kind of blame things that we can't control. And then he said, your best self is on the other end of your trail of grit. He continues, and he said, it'd be a shame if you never saw that best self. And then he says, if you never stop searching for what makes you the best version of yourself, you'll take off beyond boundaries you never knew were there. Okay? And that's what I see him do. This last part is really inspiring to me because, what if everybody in this world was working to be the best version of themselves? Right? And even if that was our goal in 2020, how can I be the best version of myself? And what does that actually mean? And I'm hopeful that in my comments today, you can be thinking about that, kind of tap into that. What does that mean for me to show up as my best self? So today what we're going to do, we're going to cover 4 of these, some of them a little quicker than others. But if you want, if you have a pen out, you can just kind of put a little star by it, the ones that we're going to cover. And we're going to first talk a little bit about grit. We're going to talk about what that means and how can we channel our grit in 2020. We're going to next talk about owning the moment, okay? And what actually does that mean? Adam would say, take it one play at a time. But how can we do that if we don't play football? And then we're going to talk a little bit about practice number 7 and practice number 10, okay? So that's where we're going to go. How does that sound? Great. Nice. Okay, let's go. And so I would tell you a few things. You could just listen and learn today. But I don't think that really has the best impact. Instead, I'd really encourage you to apply and do. What's one thing you could take from today to help channel you to have your best year yet, right? Who wants their best year yet? Yeah, me too. And then I would love for you to go back and teach this to people that you love. Because, if you read anything about success, these themes keep on popping up, right? In a lot of different, maybe trainings you go to or books that you read. So would love to share, have you share, what you talk about or what you learned today. Do you want to do a fun, quick exercise to get us going? Okay, I want to do a fun, quick exercise that kind of demonstrates grit and mindset. And I'd love somebody to help me out. Just do a quick, all you got to do is count to 1, 2, 3. Who'd be willing to count to 1, 2, 3 with me? Nice. Okay, I saw your hand first. Come up. What's your first name? Justin? All right, everyone say, hey, Justin. Hey, Justin. Okay, nice. All right, so Justin and I, what we're going to do is we're just going to count 1, 2, 3, every other person. Okay? So we're just going to stand across and we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. Have you been practicing this? It's pretty good. Okay, so turn to the person next to you, stand up. I'd like you to try that. I'm just going to give you 30 seconds to try it. All right, so pretty quick, just try it out. Okay, so next step is instead of 2, we're going to stomp. Okay, so it'll be like
1.
Yep, 1. Yeah, so it'll be like 1, stop, 3.
Okay, so I say my 2.
Yep, or you say, yeah, and then.
I go like 1.
Okay, so it'll be like say 1, stop for 2, then say 3.
Okay.
Okay, so start again.
1, 3.
1, 3.
1, 3.
1, 3. Perfect. All right, you can have a seat so you can see what we're doing. All right, have a seat, have a seat, have a seat. Okay, all right, okay. All right. Optimist. We're going to try to level this up a little bit, all right? And what we're going to do is Justin and I are going to do it again, and I'm going to say 1. Instead of saying 2, we're going to stomp, and then we're going to say 3. Okay? So it'll go something like this. You go, Justin.
1, 3.
1, 3.
1, 3.
1, 3. And you can just bring your own style to it, okay? So try it out. Stand up. Say 1, stop for 2, then say 3. It's awesome. Listen to everybody moan. Okay, we're going to do it one more time. Yeah. We're going to say 1, stop for 2, clap for 3. Okay, you go.
1.
1.
1.
1. That's awesome. Is this your first time here?
Yes.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming. Wow.
I gotta I'm not shy. I can't be in sales. That's what I do. So
What sales do you work in?
window siding, roofing.
Okay, what's your company?
Patrick Miller Construction. That's my owner right there.
Oh, nice. Okay, all right, have a seat. Okay, nice job. Okay, so Optimist. Okay, all right. Let's level this up one more time. Should we level this up one more time? Let's go. Okay, so last time what we're going to do is we're going to say 1, stomp for 2, and clap for 3. Oh, and you got it. All right, let's go. You start.
1.
1. Oops, I made a mistake. Okay. And guess what? If you make a mistake, I just encourage you to clap it off and start over. Try it out.
Is that it?
That's it. That was awesome. Thank you. Can you take a picture of me when I'm speaking up there? Okay, whenever. Okay. All right, nice job. Okay, so here's what I'd love to do. What do you think about how does this apply to being an optimistic? What does this exercise have to do with mindset or reaching your goals or being gritty?
Because I really wanted my partner to do well.
Yes.
Communicate with me, to go back
Okay, good.
and forth and make it happen, right?
Good.
I wanted success.
Good, you wanted success and you wanted your partner, you wanted to connect with your partner. Awesome, okay, excellent. What other ways does this apply to mindset?
You really have to focus.
You had to focus. There's so many distractions happening, right? And I kind of think in our world right now with our phones and emails coming in, there's a lot of distractions. It can be really easy to get off focus to where you want to go, right? What do you think over there?
You can learn new things and change.
And didn't you have fun learning new things and changing? Yeah, I mean, I saw a lot of people smiling. The thing is that's really interesting is, did you see people's reaction when I said we were going to make it even more difficult, that when we were going to level it up? What did people do? Oh, and it was a kind of a loud groan. So I think this really does apply to us. And, you know, I think first you saw kind of your brain take over, right? You know, that it was just something small, but your brain was like, oh, I don't want to try something new. I don't want to stand up and, you know, count 1, 2, 3 differently. And so we do have to kind of pay attention to when we get in our own way, right? And what I see that the best do in every profession, when they have a challenge like this, they say, no problem, right? They're like Justin, who raised his hand really high, really fast. So let's give Justin a round of applause for helping out. Okay. So let's dive into some of these ideas, because even in this exercise, you had to be gritty, right? You had to stay gritty. And so we're going to start with that first idea. And I want you to think about, as we're talking about this, what do you really want to do in 2020? Okay, what are some of the goals that you have in 2020? Even as you're listening, just jot a few down on the back of your page. Because what we know about grit, and this is a definition by Angela Duckworth. So she was the first person, like from a scholarly perspective, that has defined what grit is. And I used some of her research when I was writing this book. And so grit means having passion, perseverance for your very long-term goals. So it means that we stick with things, that we stick with our goals no matter if it feels like a marathon, right? We kind of stick with them. And here's all the research, a lot of it from Angela Duckworth. She's a professor at University of Pennsylvania. And her research says that the gritty we are, more gritty we are, meaning the more excited we are about our goals, the more willing we are to stick with them, all of these things happen. Okay, if you have son or daughters, we have higher GPAs. Grit's even connected to length of marriage, which kind of blows my mind. More engagement at work. We did a study last year. I still do some teaching at Minnesota State, and I help coordinate the Performance Psychology Master's Program. And we did a study last year where we asked the best athletes in the world, how do they develop their grit? And all of them said that this major moment in their life that was a difficult moment helped them be grittier. Okay, that's what they said was the defining moment that helped develop their grit. And sometimes when we look back, when we're going through a struggle, even if it's small, we might look back or even when we're experiencing it now, we kind of feel sorry for ourselves sometimes. But even there's another study that suggests that, even adults, when they're asked what was the most important day in their life, it was a day they had to overcome a significant amount of adversity. Right? And so I think that's what grit really is about, is like sticking with things when they're hard. It also predicts positive affect, which means positive emotions and happiness and life satisfaction. And the way I make sense of that is I think we all need something to go after. Right? We all need goals. Scott and I just spent 6 days in Florida at Tony Robbins, okay? So give Scott a round of applause for going. Steve, why did I say Scott? Steve. Okay, Steve, Scott, I was channeling my, okay, Steve. Anyway, Tony talked a lot about how you either grow or you die, right? And I think that's really powerful to think about, like every day, are we growing in our mindset? Are we growing as people, or are we kind of dying in some way? And I think grit helps us continue to grow. I think about how grit is made, all right? And maybe some of you know this. Is anybody a science teacher or anything like that? Okay. But kind of what happens is a tiny piece of sand gets in an oyster, okay? And what happens is, so it's a tiny piece of sand that gets in this, and what happens is about 7 years of developing calcium carbonate around this tiny piece of sand, a pearl is developed. Okay, so when I think about grit, I think about how a pearl is developed. That is this tiny piece of sand that gets in the shell, right? And over and over and over again, it seems like an irritant, but then eventually this pearl is developed. And think about how much pearls cost in our country, right? And so the same kind of thing, if we apply it to ourselves, like without this grit, right? Without sticking with things even when they're difficult, we can't develop this pearl. And maybe this pearl is a goal that you're going after in 2020. Maybe it's a deeper relationship with your family or your kids or someone that you love. There could be a lot of different things on that pearl, but you can't develop it without sticking with it. And so here's what the research says about how do you develop your grit. Okay, so I pulled out kind of 4 different ideas. I do some executive coaching, and yesterday I was talking to one of the clients that I work with who does some work in financial planning. Very successful business, somewhere between his revenue, somewhere between $500,000 and $1 million a year, okay? Really successful, but guess what? He's not happy, and he's really stressed, and he wants to leave. He's looking for an exit plan. And so happiness doesn't always mean making more money, right? And so, but we talked about how do you find what you're mostly passionate about? And really what I said to him is you gotta try things. You gotta just keep on working, trying it, and then if you don't like it. When Don mentioned how I was at the Boston Marathon bombing and that changed my trajectory in my life, I wasn't speaking much before that day in 2013. But after that, I spent a lot of time thinking about what energizes me? What do I love to do when I'm driving somewhere? And it's this. And then I pursued that more often, right? Because here's just a few things that are kind of shown to improve your grit. You got to pursue what excites you. So what does excite you? What do you want to do more of in 2020? You got to keep going, right? Practice is what allows you to stay gritty and develop your grit. Last time I was here, we talked about kind of owning why you do what you do. So thinking about that and remind yourself of that every day. And then today, all right, we're going to talk a little bit about our optimism and hope. And our self-talk is directly connected to our ability to be optimistic. So that's a little bit about grit. A couple years ago, I was speaking at an elementary school classroom. It was a 5th grade classroom, and I used to write some newspaper articles in the Mankato Free Press. And so the teacher asked me to come in, and I was talking about one of the concepts I'm going to talk about a little bit later. And she, all these students were asking me questions. It was super fun, right? They were just drilling me with questions. And at the end, she kind of raised her hand and she said, Cindra, what's your favorite quote? And I said, oh, I know what it is. And I said, it's a Donna Williams quote. And I said, if your dreams don't scare you, they aren't big enough. Okay, and she was sitting in her chair and she kind of sat back, and I could see like my words kind of hit her, and then she said, well, why should they be a little scary? And I said, well, they should be a little scary because if they're not, you're not going to reach your potential. They should just be a little out of your reach, because then you're going to grow, and that's how you're going to learn about yourself in 2020, right? And later, after my talk, she came up to me and she said, thank you so much for telling me that. Because she said, I've been doing this job for 30 years, and I forgot to keep dreaming. Sometimes we can kind of forget why we do what we do. We're not growing, we're not learning, and we're not connected always to what we're passionate about. So how many of you have your goals written down already for next year? Look at that. That's impressive. Okay, quick question. There was a study done with Harvard students about 30 years ago. It's called the Harvard Alumni Study. And they asked students how many of them had their goals written down. Okay, so Harvard students, how many of their goals written down? Ron knows, okay?
3%.
3%. Ron knows it, okay? Isn't that crazy? So the study found that only 3% had their goals written down. And what they found 30 years later is those 3% made more money than the 97% combined. Can you believe that? So if we met, there's a lot of different ways to measure success or whatever, but the point is when you write it down, you're committing to yourself what you're going to do. So if you haven't already, I'd encourage you to think about what is it that you really want in 2020. Because I think one of the main reasons people don't get what they want is because they really haven't thought about it. I really admire a speaker in Minnesota. His name is Mark LeBlanc. He used to be the Minnesota NSA, the National Speakers Association president. And I attended a workshop with him a couple of months ago, and he said the number one thing that people don't know is their goals. They don't know what they want. Isn't that true? So I'd encourage you, just if you're taking some notes, turn that sheet over and just write yourself a note. Say, examine my goals for next year sometime before January 1, and write them down. Because if you write them down, you're more likely to commit to them. If you tell somebody else, there's even a higher amount of accountability. Okay, so was that helpful? Okay, let's talk a little bit about the second practice on here, but the sixth practice on your sheet. Okay? And this is important because I find that people have, if we think about our goals too much, actually, it can be kind of suffocating. So I want to talk a little bit about when you should think about it, when you shouldn't. Okay? And I'm going to talk about it related to this practice about owning the moment. And I bet you know this. Your mind can be in three places. Where could they be? Awesome. Past, present, or future. So right here, where do you think your best everyday lies? Okay. Okay, I heard it's past. I heard right now. Okay. So right now is, I know that people have mixed thoughts on this, or mixed kind of thoughts right when I talk about it. But really only our best happens in the present. And so a lot of the work that I do with pro athletes, but even the coaching I do, it's helping people spend more time in the now. And so help me out. What are some emotions you might feel if you're thinking about the past too much? Pressure, regret. What else? How else could you feel? Defeated, unhappy. You could be thinking about happiness as you think back to the back, right? Like
He's an optimist.
He's an optimist. Yeah, I like it. Thank you. Thank you, Steve. Right. So really, we should be thinking about the past in a positive way, right? But many times we don't. If you think about the future too much, what are some negative emotions that might happen in the future? Fear. Anxiety. So I find this really helpful. Because when I'm thinking about myself, and to me, honestly, this is kind of my trigger. This is where I experience a lot of kind of my own suffering. And much of it is learned. I had a mom and a dad that they were polar opposites. still do that, still living. My dad is a pure optimist. He would love this group. And my mom is a pure pessimist. Love her to death, right? Love them both. But I grew up kind of with this mix of both. And I have the mix of both inside me. And so I learned some of these behaviors from my mom about worry and anxiety. And so I got to really pay attention when I go too much to the future. And am I the only one that experiences this? Okay, I didn't think so, right? I think, again, this is the human condition. But the present is where we're at our best. And if we can spend even more time in the present moment, my theory is that the best, okay, in the book I talk about the 95-5% rule. And what I mean is that 5% of your time, you're thinking about the future in a positive way. You're thinking about where you want to go, why you want to go there, what's excited about it. Or maybe you're thinking about the past and you're thinking about how awesome things were. And you're thinking about great experiences that you had. But we're only spending time there about 5%. Majority of the time we're spending in the present moment because that's where we're at our best. And sometimes when I ask people in my workshops, I'm like, well, where is your mind typically? Sometimes they say, I had one person say, well, 40, 40, 20. And so just be thinking about that. How can you spend more time in the present, noticing the gifts around you? And the way to do that, kind of simply put, is for us to be aware of where our mind is, and then gently get it back to the present. Really, it's really just kind of a choice. Maybe anybody heard of mindfulness? Being mindful? That's what this practice is all about, is kind of noticing where your mind is, and just gently, without judgment, getting it back to the present. And I teach my kids this a lot. Sometimes I think they're listening, sometimes I'm not sure, maybe you know what I mean. But my son was at a fifth grade, now he's fifth grade, but a couple of years ago he had a birthday party in our front yard, and they were playing hockey, and I turn around and I see this. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I kind of went a little crazy a little bit, just excited. And I said, this is my son Blake. I said, Blake, what are you doing? I thought maybe they were channeling all of these pro athletes who I told them about meditation and mindfulness. And he goes, Mom, we're channeling our inner Yoda. And I have no idea what the guy in the white's doing. I think he's trying too hard, And the goalies, they don't care about mindfulness or meditation. But isn't that wonderful? Yeah. So, but, there's even research to show that doing this with kids really helps decrease their anxiety. And, I'm not perfect at this. When I moved to Minnesota 12 years ago now, my husband and I we grew up in Iowa. And then for 7 years, I lived in North Carolina. So anybody been to Carolina? Yeah, okay. Love North Carolina. We moved back here when we had our son, Carter, now who's our oldest, and he was 2 months old when we moved. And when we moved, I was the sole breadwinner. Worked teaching at Minnesota State, and my husband didn't have a job, so he stayed home, with Carter. And so I get to Minnesota State, and I'm loving it. And in about a couple months into the job, I hear about this idea of retrenchment, okay? Retrenchment means that budgets are low and faculty are going to get cut. Okay, I don't think too much about it, but I engage in one of these water cooler conversations. Do you know what I mean by that, right? A conversation that you don't really need, but maybe... maybe sometimes you do it to kind of create drama. I don't know. For me, I was doing it in that situation to get more information. And so I went out to my hallway, and I asked my colleague, John. I said, John, who do you think is going to get cut? And he said, Cindra, I think it's going to be you. What? I didn't even think it was going to be me. And then he starts listing all of these reasons that I'm going to be cut. 10 reasons. Yeah, and I thought, well, I guess I'm going to be cut. I hadn't even thought about it. And so this was October. And all of a sudden I start believing I'm going to be the one that's going to be cut. I was the last faculty hired. I'm the faculty of 1 at that point in my area. And people don't really know about performance psychology. We weren't a nationally named program at that point. And so I was convinced I was going to be cut. And if I go back to that moment in my life, I was a miserable teacher, worst course evaluations ever, because I came in with all this negativity, right? And it's like I was smaller. I couldn't be a very good mom to my 3-month-old, wasn't a very good spouse for sure, and I wasn't very kind to myself. Because I thought to myself, why did I move all the way across this country for this dream job that I'm going to lose? So the cut list comes out in March, and it comes out via email, okay? Of all things, right? So I sit down at my email, take a deep breath, ready for the worst case. I go down to our department, and my name's not there. And guess what? John's name is. Of course, right? And I definitely don't wish any ill will to John. But what I realized at that moment in my life, oh my goodness, I had just created all this suffering from October to March. It was self-created. Nobody can make me feel, I think about that quote, like nobody can make you inferior besides yourself. No one can feel like you lack value besides yourself, right? And so I had just done this to myself. And I had done this by kind of, again, my trigger, my anxiety. So I learned a really important lesson, is to get the facts. and my own brain can go easily to the worst case scenario. So what I'd encourage you to do right now is just look at this list and just either circle or write down, what do you think your maybe emotional trigger is? Okay, because I think we all can have maybe a home where that doesn't allow us to really be at our best. What would yours be? Is it fear? Is it anxiety? Do you feel pressure? Is it anger or regret? Because really, like the first step of this is really awareness, right? Okay, so I'd like to talk a little bit about practice number 7, okay? And then I'm going to close with practice number 10, okay? And I'm just going to go to maybe before I talk about practice number 7, I'd love to kind of just quickly talk about this, and you can learn more about this in the book, or you can ask me about it later. But I find that one thing that people kind of struggle with is letting go of mistakes. And I think this connects to our optimism as well, right? The creed, to forget the mistakes of the past and press on to greater achievements of the future. And so the way that I teach this, because so many times when we make a mistake, we can kind of sit in it. And then we kind of stir. And so if you want to do these actions with me, you're more likely to remember things if you get it into your body. So just why don't you just do these with me for a second. Can you just go learn. And burn. And return. Okay, nice job. Learn, burn, return. Okay, so let me kind of explain. Learn means, after you make a mistake or do something you wish you wouldn't have, just work to have a compassionate approach with yourself. Actually, the best are compassionate with themselves. They realize they're not perfect. And I wrote this idea of just like objectively just saying, next time, all right? Like even that kind of language, like next time I'm going to do this, right? Instead of beating ourselves up for something we wish we would have done just a little bit different. And then the burn means, okay, I'm going to give you a clue. If you ever see a Minnesota Viking go out on the sidelines after a play, if you ever see him wipe off his number, okay? There we go. He's burned in that play. Okay? Burn means let it go. And there's some research that if you have a physical cue or a word to let things go, it's a lot easier. So sometimes we kind of stay in the past too much, right? We might even think too much about the learn. But what I would say is the best can really move on that fast. So why don't you just kind of snap with me? How fast? That fast. How fast? How fast? Right? And so I think kind of like dipping into, okay, what did I learn? Maybe allow myself to feel that discomfort a little bit so I learn and grow, but I don't want to stay in there. because that's where I can't be optimistic. That's not where I grow. And then the burn means, all right, so an action or a phrase. The Minnesota State football team, believe it or not, we have a tiny toilet on the sidelines. Okay, it's like this, and it says this funny flushing sound. Okay, but they love it, and we use it actually just to kind of flush that, right? Kind of the idea that next play, let's burn it, let's move on. Because if our best is in the present, we got to move on that fast. Okay, and then return means, can you return with confident body language and self-talk? Like you didn't make the mistake. Can you talk to yourself really powerfully to move on and protect your confidence? Because so many times we can kind of get stuck in that past. So why don't you do it with me one more time? Will you say learn? Burn. Return. Okay, nice job. All right, so time goes by fast. I'll just kind of quickly talk about the last couple of practices. And the seventh one on your sheet is all about choosing empowering emotions. And I think this is powerful. This is based on research by Barbara Fredrickson. There's a great book called Positivity. It's based on 30 years of research on the power of emotions. And what her research shows is that high performers experience positive emotions so they thrive. And this ratio is a 3-to-1. Okay, so let me kind of explain it a little bit. The 3 means 3 powerful, empowering emotions. 1 means disempowering emotion. And the upward bound to that is 30-to-1. So that means people still thrive when they experience 30 powerful emotions to 1 disempowering emotion. But what the research shows is that most of us are kind of a 1-to-1 ratio. Okay, and that predicts stagnation. Not people in this room, right? I already see some positivity, lots of positivity. But most people are like 1-to-1. And 1-to-3 predicts kind of like a downward spiral. So why does this matter? High-performing teams. So think about your team at work. What we know about high-performing teams in business have an 85% positivity percentage. That means their verbals and nonverbals are positive. And then Gottman's research shows about how that connects to thriving marriages. And when you thrive, you're about a 75. Now, it's not 100. Why is this not 100?
Nobody's perfect.
Nobody's perfect. Why else is it not 100? Because we need to learn. Because, you know, negative emotions can be really powerful at times to create change, to help us think about what we want, where we're going. But I think this is powerful to know that these things, you know, when we have too much, that's where the issue is. And I would describe there's lots of different ways to change how you feel. I think your focus, what are you paying attention to? Are you paying attention to what's missing? Are you paying attention to what's great? The meaning that you give things, it changes your emotions. And then I would say, you know, one other thing is to, Bill, I'm going to hand this to you. What did I just hand to you?
It's a little toy spider.
It is a little toy spider. It's plastic, don't worry, okay? Does it look delicious? Yeah, okay, all right. With chocolate on it, maybe. Okay, anyway, what I gave him is an ant, okay? Yeah, I know, it looks kind of like a spider. But what I mean is, this is something I talked about last time I was here, right? That we all can experience automatic negative thoughts. Everybody does. This is part of the human condition. I used to think that I was only going to say positive things to myself. How long do you think that lasted?
Next time.
Yeah, next time, yeah. Not too long, right? 15 minutes until I heard myself saying something negative. So this is from a book called Daniel Amen, Change Your Brain, Change Your Life. But this concept did change my life because I realized, okay, I need to manage this negativity. And honestly, not believe everything I think. I kind of just worked at fact check it. Is that really true, Cindra? You know, from my MSU story. And by the way, the first time I told the MSU story, Minnesota State University, someone in my audience said, well, yeah, that means MSU. And I was like, yeah, of course, Minnesota State University. And she said, oh, no. It means you make something up, okay? But the something was another S word. I won't say it, okay? But I thought, oh my goodness, isn't that so true? So one of my mottos now is like, no MSUing. Don't make something up. You know, ask, and then you'll figure it out, right? Get the information, don't make it up. Because that's just your old brain talking. So, all right, I'm kind of noticing that I got to wrap it up, right? Okay, so let's see here. I'm going to wrap it up by doing this. Hold on. Okay, I'm going to wrap it up in 2 ways. I find one of the easiest ways to change how I feel is change the question or where I'm focused at. And these are some questions that I have in my book, but I really love them. And as I read them, I just want you to reflect on these questions in your own life. Okay, and you might even want to take a picture of these questions, get your phone out, because they're powerful. And a way to redirect your focus when you're kind of stuck into things maybe that you can't control, or when you're kind of stuck on something in the past or the future. These questions I find really powerful. In the Optimist chapter that I wrote in the book, I talked about the 3 OPP strategy, which means asking yourself what's the opportunity here 3 times, right? To kind of program yourself to think of something positive. But, I want you to think about these questions now in your own life. Like, what progress have you made in 2019? What are you looking forward to next year? What's awesome about your family right now? What's amazing about your work? What are you grateful for? What are you happy about right now? Right? And all these things change our focus really quickly to keep us excited and going. All right, the last practice I want to end with is practice number 10. Would anybody be willing to read what it says on practice number 10? Anybody be willing to read this idea of courage over comfort? Who wants to read that for us? Yeah.
The world's best feel uncomfortable regularly. When we stay in our comfort zone, we don't grow. High performers know that magic happens outside of the comfort zone.
Awesome. So again, our brain is here to keep us safe, not here to help us be a peak performer, keep us happy. So one of the things we got to do is keep on being courageous and knowing that our brain is going to kind of want us to be comfortable. So while you're writing those goals out for next year, I want you to think about if you're really going after something courageous, what would it be? And I think it kind of 2 circles that in your courage zone, you're really acting with courage and bravery. You're okay standing out. You're going forward with things that are really exciting to you. When your comfort zone, you're kind of just playing small. You're kind of giving in, maybe trying to be like everybody else. And for 2020, I'd really encourage you to embrace your courage zone. I think about how this is really your potential zone. And when I think about times where I have to be really courageous, it's right here, right on the football field, where I'll look a little shorter and a little different than most people. But what would it mean for you to be really courageous in 2020? I have a podcast I'd love for you to check out. I have 2, actually. So this is the one that just got listed as one of the #1 podcasts, actually on a list for #1 podcasts for women, which is super cool, but it's a podcast anyone can listen to. And on Monday mornings, I'm on the radio in Mankato. We put these on the podcast. And then I interview some of the world's best experts, thought leaders on mindset. So that is on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, iHeartRadio. And then I started this awesome podcast with Tim McNiff. He used to be on Care 11. Who knows Tim McNiff? Okay. So Tim and I are partnering on a few things. Actually, I think we'll become one of my trainers for Beyond Grit, which is pretty cool. And we started a Beyond Grit podcast. And so we, every week, we started maybe 12 weeks ago, but every week this year, for the next year, we are talking about a concept from the book. We're kind of going through the book chapter by chapter. So if you have the book or want to read it, or even if you don't, you can listen to what we talk about, and it's awesome. I love having a conversation with him every week. And then I did bring a few books that you can purchase if you'd like, about some books and workbooks. I just bought a few books today, so I'll send you a book before Christmas if you'd like. But I do have some here. Books are $20 and the workbooks are $15. Okay, so if you'd like to grab those, I'll be hanging out. When I think about today, well, before I close, what was helpful about today? Like, what's something you're taking from today? Can anyone just shout a few ideas out? Goals. Okay, awesome. What else was helpful for today? Yeah.
Mindset is your engine.
It's your engine. It powers everything. Thank you. What else was helpful?
Live in the now.
Live in the now. How can we do that more, right? And it's a practice. not something that is natural to our brain, so we got to practice it more often. Yeah.
Always be gritty.
Always be gritty, yeah. Stay gritty. I love it. Yes, Roxy.
I love the idea of a physical cue to
Yeah.
release something.
Yeah. So just something to kind of move on, let it go. Kind of tells your brain to, okay, move on. And if it's the same thing you do every time, that becomes more habitual. So awesome. I'm going to end with a story about courage. You know, I'm grateful to work with a lot of amazing people, and this woman I worked with for 5 or 6 years. Her name is Gabe Grunewald. Does anybody know Gabe or know of her? Okay. So Gabe hired me about 5 years ago to help her work on her mental game. She's a runner at the University of Minnesota, and she was sponsored by Brooks. You can see that on her top right there. And so she wanted to make it to the Olympic Games. And so that meant that she had to get in the top 3 at the Olympic trials for the U.S. She was very close, one of the world's best runners in the 1500. And so we worked a lot on her mindset, but she had a few obstacles in her way. One being, if you look closely at her scar, she was diagnosed for the 2nd time as a pro runner with a rare type of cancer. And so she battled through that, came back, and then it hit her again. And so she ran her last race as a pro runner, and it was amazing sitting where I saw, you know, all these runners come together and give her courage. At the same time, she started a nonprofit called Brave Like Gabe, and I'd encourage all of you to check it out. And if you have, you know, a way, if you'd like to donate to anything this year, I'd encourage you to check out Brave Like Gabe, because it's really helping sponsor people who have, and funding rare cancer research. So one day she was running in New York City, okay, after a bout of chemotherapy. She was running in New York City with her husband in Central Park. And so this guy comes up to them, kind of a stranger, and says, you know, Gabe, or he didn't know who Gabe was, but he said, hey, you look like you're a good runner. I'd like to start running. How do I do that? Okay, and look who this person was.
Mark Wahlberg.
Yeah, okay, good guess. Hey, who knows who this person is with the backward hat? Chip Gaines. Okay, so he has a company called Magnolia with his wife. You can find it at Target, and they have this big line of restaurants, all this decorations, decor things. And so they ended up partnering, where Gabe trained Chip for his first marathon, okay, and meanwhile they started a marathon in Waco, Texas, raised $500,000 for rare cancer research. Isn't that amazing? I know. Wow, I don't think there's any coincidences, right? And so Gabe tweeted after the race, she said, you know, I think Chip could have ran faster if he wouldn't have worn his tool belt. Could you imagine if those people run a marathon? That would be extra hard. But I want to, you know, encourage you, end with this idea of moving in 2020, brave like Gabe. So Gabe passed about 6 months ago. And she had this frame, a picture in her living room that now I have in my living room. And I see it every day, and I think about Gabe. And it's everything to do about being optimistic. And it says this, it says there are only 2 ways to live your life. One is as though nothing is a miracle, and the other as though everything is a miracle. I found out that from my 5th grader, this is a Albert Einstein quote. Didn't know it. Okay, I was like, hey, 5th graders, smart. But brave like Gabe means to me, right? It means to her. Like in 2020, I'd encourage you, this is what she said, being brave for me means never giving up on the things that make me feel alive. So thank you again. I'm so grateful to be here this afternoon, and have an awesome rest of your year. Thank you.
Great job.
Thank you
so much.
Thank you.
I really
Wow.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Way to go.